And for parents that say, that the abstinence approach doesn't work, that technology is here and it's better to teach our kids and give them a phone early so they can actually learn how to use it as a tool. What are your thoughts on that?
So, I mean, I agree. Technology is here to stay, but technology doesn't necessarily mean a smartphone either, right? Like there's a range of technology. I think our kids can still use a laptop. They can still use, I mean, like iPads get a little touchy because, obviously there's apps and such to that. So you want to make it age appropriate. And I really stress this gradual entry. If you're going to open up yourself to allowing this, then what boundaries are you going to set? What kind of contract are you going to set with your child? What kind of conversations are you going to have? Like we have to educate our children on the harms. If they don't understand that and we say no as a parent, like that's when the disconnection happens between parent and child, right? We want our children to trust us. Trust comes from building trust over time and from being transparent with them and authentic. So if they understand that when we say no, it's coming from a place of love and concern, they're much more likely to accept that no. They may still be really upset about it, but we need to hold that boundary. I think the other thing is let's teach our kids resilience because we want them to be okay in the face of others with phones, right? Like, so if their friends has a phone, like I want my child to be like, I get that you have a phone, but in our family, my mom doesn't allow it or my parents don't allow it. And him, being okay to say that. And if I've given him 10 reasons why he can't have a phone, I'm hoping that'll build some confidence and leadership skills so that he can say, I'm okay with this for now.
So with your child right now, are you already having these conversations with them about your thoughts on the phone and why you don't want them to have access to a phone?
100%. Yeah, he's very well aware of it. He knows that he's not getting a phone. Right now we're saying 14. I don't know what it becomes in a couple of years. What I'm hoping that in a couple of years, that there's enough parents that have signed a pledge on our platform, like Unplugged Canada, to say that there are so many people who feel this way that in a couple of years, the norm is not that every child has a phone, right? We begin to reverse that phone. My hope is in 5 to 10 years, if we see a child with a smartphone, it becomes as surprising as seeing a toddler with Coca-Cola, right? That's where we need to get. And, Tanya, like we can't rely on government policies to take care of our kids, and we can't rely on these heavy tech companies to take care of our kids. It's just not happening fast enough. So as parents, we need to unite. And if we can all unite and feel this way, it just gives more impetus and rise for other parents to follow those same footsteps.
And I think that that's often what I've heard from parents is that something feels off with the rush to give kids technology, but they feel really, really alone. And I think that that's one of the biggest obstacles that parents face is all the friends are getting a phone. My kid keeps on asking me. And eventually we kind of cave and go, okay, I'm going to keep those limits up. I'm going to keep checking in on their phone. But I think eventually the tide of social media does pull children away.
I think we fool ourselves as parents by thinking that we can manage this. And the other thing, you touched on something where I think you said, like, it doesn't really feel right for parents to give a phone. I think like most parents feel that kind of queasiness, like, am I doing the right thing? But we do it because everybody else is doing it. And so what do we need to do? We need to speak up and we need to unite, right? And I think we need to talk to each other, talk to the neighbors. And, I hear so many parents tell me like how their child is changing in front of them after they've had a phone, and so many examples that are so hurtful, can come to mind. It's just such a slippery slope. So why are we risking it? All because we don't want to isolate them. And I always say, like, we have to balance that fear of isolating our kids with the more realistic outcome of what can happen by giving it to them when they're not ready.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know Unplugged Canada, a big part of your mandate is kind of reclaiming childhood for our kids. Yeah. And when you think about that, what does that mean exactly?
Oh my God. Tanya, I am such an advocate for outdoor connections and real life connections. And, you walk down so thankfully now the schools are phone free, at least in some provinces. And it's great to see. But prior to that, You could walk in a schoolyard after school and see a row of children sitting beside each other, all on their cell phone, looking down, not communicating, not playing. So, reclaiming childhood is about being connected to the outdoors and being connected to others, but also being connected to self, And I feel like we're the children that are, coming through this today, there's just no time to sit with yourself because every minute of the day that they have free, they are attached to a phone. I have been on vacation with families who have young teens and they're walking into walls because they're moving from one room to another, looking at their cell phone. And, Tanya, when I hear things like, if my son's at a pool party and there's a boy who wants to come out of the pool because he's dying to go play a video game, like it breaks my heart. Kids are wanting to leave their camping sites to go back home to game or to leave a theme park when they're on vacation because they want to get back to their phones. So I find, so how can you have any connection to others or to just the beautiful, just natural outdoors when you're just consistently fixated on trying to get that instant gratification, that dopamine fix from a smartphone?
One of the things I see in practice with teen girls particularly is very often as you talk about that kind of knowledge of self, is that knowledge of self becomes knowledge of others. So there's a lot of awareness of what's happening on their social, what's happening, who's liking their reels, whatever it may be. But there's a lot of anxiety that goes outwards instead of stabilizing the core of who am I and who do I want to be in the world.
100%. And they can't even begin to understand that because they're so consumed by, the comparative nature that social media brings to them, trying to figure out who to be influenced by, right? Like this is the other thing we're losing is real live mentors. And their mentors are becoming influencers on social media who may not at all align with the values that you are trying to instill in your child and all that home life stuff that is so important. So I feel like we need to get back to, real life mentors and having children get to know who they are, rather than just constantly, because you can't, it's the practice of mindfulness, right? And meditation. And how can you know yourself if you're constantly, if you've got your mind continuously looking at a screen that is feeding you all kinds of messages that are coming at you like 100 miles an hour. It's impossible to create a pause for yourself. And that to me is very scary. Like it's just a void that, these children are going to have.
And I think that there's many adults who struggle with that too. Who am I without the constant allure of technology or my phone or the next notification?
Yeah, so 100%. And one of the things I always tell parents, the only way we're going to succeed at this is by setting the example. Like we are the leaders in the home, right? In a family unit, your parents are your leaders and they're going to look to you. And, sometimes, listen, I enjoy the odd scroll on Instagram myself, full transparency. And sometimes, generally, if I'm on the phone around my son, it's usually because I'm doing emails, but he'll call me out on it. And I'll be like, you're right. And I try to make the distinction that it's a work email as if I'm giving myself some grace. But the reality is we absolutely have to set boundaries for ourselves and set the example for them.